Namaste, Sat Shri Akal, and welcome to Dharma Explorers. Dharma Explorers is a series of conversations with prominent personalities who are strong supporters of dharmic principles but were not born in a Hindu household. I'm your host, Jay Bansal, along with my co host, Avtans Kumarji. I'm affiliated with the Vishwa Hindu Parishad of America, where I serve as the Vice President of Education, and Avtans ji is a linguist and columnist and recipient of the San Francisco Press Club's Journalistic Excellence Award. Today, we are honored to have Savio Rodrigues ji joining us as our guest panelist from Goa. A very warm welcome to you, Savio ji.
Namaste. It's
Ji,
a pleasure to be on your talk show, and I'm also humbled to be on your talk show.
Thank you. Thank you. Now, before we get into any serious topics, let me give a brief introduction of Savio ji to our viewers. Savio Rodrigues is a serial entrepreneur and an angel investor with a 25-year experience. His business interests lie in the field of crisis management, media, AI and robotics, cow economics, environmental solutions, wastewater management, and real estate. He's also the founder and editor in chief of Goa Chronicle, a global investigative news portal that exposed the leak at the Wuhan Institute of Virology, the role of Turkey in Islamic radicalization in Bharat, the sexual crimes of the clergy in Bharat, and China's proxy war in Manipur and other northeast states. He's also the co author of the book Modi Stole My Mask on the COVID 19 pandemic and India's handling of the global health crisis. Since Dharma Explorers is a platform for individuals who are supporters of Sanatana Dharma but were not born into it, it is relevant to mention that Savio is a practicing Christian from Goa, but at the same time celebrates the revitalization of Sanatana Dharma in recent times. So, once again, welcome, Savioji. I'm really looking forward to our conversation today. So, Savioji, let's start with something relatively simple. Tell us about yourself, about your life growing up, about your family, and the influences that you had, and interaction with the Hindu community at large.
Well, I grew up in Mumbai, but when I was very young, I moved to the Middle East because my father was working in Dubai, and so all of us as a family, moved to Dubai. I spent most of my growing up years in Dubai. I came back to India when I was 21, and well, it was a very strange reason why I came back to India. So while growing up, my basic mindset was that I was a foreigner and not an Indian, and I would come to India on holidays, and I would sort of interact with my cousins and very proudly consider myself to be a foreigner rather than an Indian. And for two reasons. One was because I lived abroad. Second was because I have what one would call a link to Portuguese lineage because of my Christian background as well as from coming from Goa. So there is an ancestry that links to Portuguese. And I would be very proud of it because I did completely disliked India at that point of time. I would be very afraid of taking off my shoes and leaving it at someone's home because I thought somebody would rob my Nike shoes that I was wearing at that point of time. And because my understanding of India was everything that I saw on movies and whatever communication that existed coming out of India in the Middle East at that point of time. But when I was about 9 years of age, my grandfather, when I was on a visit to Dubai, to Bombay at that time, um, called me and said, "I want to talk to you." And I said, "Okay." So he mentioned, he said, "Son, You might think you're a foreigner today, but at some point in your life, Mother India will call you, and you will leave everything and come to serve her. So while you are within your rights to think the way you want to, that call will come to you. So I laughed it out at that point of time, and much to my grandfather's annoyance, because I was quite a bratish boy, and growing up, and I didn't pay much attention to that. But sometime in 1999 and a little earlier, a lot of my family and friends from Dubai were looking at migrating to Canada at that point of time, because there was an exodus of people that were moving from the Middle East to newer pastures, either Canada or Australia. And everybody I knew that mattered to me at that point of time were of the opinion of moving to Canada. And for a certain extent, so was I. But when it came down to actually putting in my papers and wanting to migrate, I just did not have the consciousness to do it. So while everyone proceeded with it, I decided to take a different route, and that route was to come back to India with my parents, who also wanted to come back to India. And so my sisters and my friends, they moved to Canada, and they've been staying there ever since then. And I came back to India because I felt a call to come back. I didn't know what I was going to do in India. I obviously came, hoping that something beautiful was in store because of my faith in God and in the manner in which the Almighty works. But it was a difficult decision to make, in the sense that it surprised a lot of people. They were quite surprised that I chose to come back to India rather than move on, which was something that I always spoke about, and India was some place that I always was very not so positive about. But I came here. I did my law at a college in Mumbai, and I got into journalism simultaneously at that point of time. And after that, even then, I was, for 10 years that I was here from 2022 onwards. Sorry, 2000 onwards. I was still not really a patriot, if you want to call me that. But I was with the Indian Express at the point of time. I was doing a lot of journalism within the business fraternity of journalism. But when I came to Goa and I had an interaction with the late defense minister and chief minister of Goa, he was not, he was the chief minister at that time, Mr. Manohar Parrikar. We had a very interesting conversation that stirred, I guess, both of our relationships at that point of time. And so he made a very profound statement that stayed with me. He said, it's very easy for you, Savio, to sit outside of Goa and talk about constructive changes. Why don't you come into Goa and make a difference? Of course, at that point of time, Goa was also not on my radar, because coming from Dubai to Bombay was one culture shock. Coming into Goa would have been taking the culture shock to the next level, right? So I didn't pay much attention to it at that point of time, and but I came to Goa on a holiday sometime in 2007, 2008, which also turned to be a business reasons for me to come. And I realized that there was tremendous potential economically from Goa, number one. But more importantly, I liked the lifestyle and the energy that was there in Goa, the spiritual, vibrant energy that was there in Goa. So I told my family, and my parents also, of course, wanted to build our ancestral home in our village. So I said, why not let's move to Goa? We can obviously start our business. I was not in the business at that point of time fully. While I was in the Indian Express, I was setting up my operations. And and when I came to Goa and I rekindled my friendship with Mr. Manohar Parrikar, that's when I started to get into what was considered to be aggressive and assertive journalism on social and political issues. And he has, if you were to ask me who's responsible for stirring the the feeling of responsibility towards nation building, then that would be attributed to Mr. Manohar Parrikar. Because I was still not somebody, I wanted to do something for my country, that was very clear. Whether it was going to be in the manner in which I was doing at that point of time was not very, very clear. And that channelization was done by Mr. Parrikar. And I owe a lot of what I am today to Mr. Parikar's guidance in the limited conversations we had over a period of time while he was alive. And more importantly, what transpired is I started to understand the actual what I term as the great game of India, or the geopolitical narrative building, and the schemes that were being played against India, and the need to clamp down on India and Indians from a perspective that was submissive in nature. So I started reading, I started analyzing, then I started to study a little more of our ancient culture, our history. I studied, did some certificate courses online with even a prestigious university based in the US, and started to understand conflict, understand religion, understand humanitarian approach towards conflict, and various other dimensions of problems that exist across the world. And um, and I started to read, the Bhagavad Gita, the Mahabharata, analyze it, the Ramayana, analyze it. I started reading text of the Vedas, and I came to an understanding, because I am a student of conflict, and analyzing about 50 different conflicts around the world during my studies. I realized that interpretation of religion is one of the core causes of conflict in the world. It's how one person interprets a religion and then tries to control the masses that really drives conflict towards resolving it, or towards a complete chaos or destruction because of that conflict. And in all that, when analyzing the global conflict, I realized that the core of the global conflicts were the Abrahamic religions, which are at the forefront, primarily because they spread to a wider area of dominance in different parts of the world. So whether it was the Shias fighting the Sunnis, the Christians fighting the Muslims, the Protestants fighting the Catholics, there were conflicts all around the world. Of course, in India, the conflict portrayed is a little different, because here we have the Hindus, the Christians, the Muslims all having different parts of conflict. And that's when I realized that, or that's when I analyzed and assessed for myself, that maybe in this conflicting world that we live, the real truth lies in the simplicity of Sanatan Dharma. You see, because Sanatan Dharma is not really a religion, neither is it a way of life, as portrayed by some people. It is really an essence to life. Okay, what do I mean by that? I mean that the basis of Sanatan Dharma is about finding the God in you and respecting the God around you. That's or finding the God around you and respecting it. And that's really the core uh, beauty of Sanatan Dharma. And interestingly, Bansalji, I actually found that very similar to the only to one of the most profound statements in the Bible that transformed my life. I've read many aspects of the Bible. Some I accept, some I don't. Right, but the thing I've held very dear to is the two commandments that Jesus has given to the disciples. And the first aspect of that commandment was love God with all your heart and with all your soul. And the second was love your neighbor as yourself, in simple words. So how do you love God? Somebody you have never seen, somebody you don't know, right? Technically and physically, because there is no physical presence of God. And that comes to something very similar to what is talked about in Sanatan Dharma as well. You know, so what is God? God is the manifestation of His creations primarily, or her creation, because it's dual. The energy is always dual, right? So today, who's the manifestation of God in our lives as individuals? The first manifestation of God is the life we see in front of us, which is our parents, our family members, our brothers, our sisters, the connectivity around us, the family around us, the community around us, the society around us, and largely the nation and then the world, right? So if you don't accept that simple truth about life, then you are in conflict, right? And that is where this beauty of Sanatan Dharma comes in, that it's about accepting the God in you and accepting the God and around you, or finding the God around you, right? And that is exactly where even the second aspect of what Jesus' command was, which was love your neighbor as yourself. How can you love somebody else if you don't love yourself? So, what is loving yourself? Loving yourself is accepting yourself for who you are, whether you're white, you're black, you're a person with disabilities, whether you have various other things that you might see as hindrances or unfairness to your life, but God's made you unique. And that is the essence of what Sanatan Dharma really spoke about through all the readings that you went. See, there was never, contrary to this theory that was propagated by a lot of the West in India, about India to the rest of the world. We were a very knowledgeable society. We were a very wise society. We were a very principled society, where we understood the value of people, humanity, nature, animals, which is why we have so much of reverence for a cow, because there is a spirituality attached to it. There is also a science attached to it, and so on and so forth. And that is what drove me towards Sanatan Dharma, to try and see that there is reason. Because I'm a man of reason. I'm not a man of blind faith. Neither am I a man who accepts any dogma that easily, unless I'm able to rationalize it in the yardstick that is important to me. And the yardstick that is important to me is humanity. Okay, you could believe in a stone. If it makes you a better person, so be it. You know, compared to what any person believes. Because my logic is this: if God created all of us, and that's the core essence of everybody's belief, that we are a creation of a power or the Almighty that's greater than us, then we are all children of the same source, the same universal consciousness, the same God. So why would God create a division amongst His own people, or hers? The amongst the people that He has. The answer is division was never created by God. Your idea of God has created the division amongst people. Your definition of God has created the differences between people. Because let's say I'm a parent today, I have two daughters of mine, right? Can I choose between one or the other? I can't. So if creation has created all of us, then I don't think creation is choosing. And who you or universal consciousness is choosing whether this person is more favorite to me than the other, right? I think your entire existence is an embodiment of your karma and the execution of your dharma. That's what the real essence of humanity is. Your an individual's role is. So it's understanding what your karma is all about, and delivering on your dharma. It's as simple as that. So today, if you were a soldier and your dharma at that point of time was to take down an enemy, no matter whether it's right or wrong, and you are obedient to that, you will obviously have its own repercussions for it. But that's what you would do as following your dharma. So if when you go to the Mahabharata and you read through the conversations between Krishna and Arjun, and you understand the conflict, it's one of the best books on conflict avoidance rather than conflict resolution. The problem, what the West has been doing for many years, is a concept which is called conflict resolution. However, if you read the Bhagavad Gita, you read a certain text of the Vedas, you realize that the principles in Sanatana Dharma were always about conflict avoidance, not conflict resolution.
Right.
Prevention is better than cure,
Right.
right? That's the principle of it, and that's really what. Because I'm a man who studies conflict and who works in conflict areas, I started to realize the beauty that conflict avoidance was the role. So if you analyze Krishna and Arjun's conversation, right, you would realize that they went to the largest extent to avoid the conflict. There was many discussions, many dialogues back and forth, but at the end result, in order to do what was right, Krishna had advised them to follow their dharma.
Right.
Right, and that is the beauty of Sanatan Dharma in various aspects. The
Right.
respect given to animals, to plants. It's
Right.
it's fascinating. It is scientific, and it's not dogmatic. My
Right.
my only thing is that at any point of time as we move ahead, we cannot change Sanatan Dharma to being a dogma. When it becomes a dogma, it loses the very essence of what it stands for.
Right. That's very true, and really grateful for your answer here. And you went to great length in explaining all the things. And first of all, I want to thank you for coming back to India. So it's a very fascinating story that you bring to the table. And so that brings me to a quick question here. So, now you have a various perspective about Hinduism from being, living abroad. You also see how that Hinduism manifests outside of India and how it relates to other religions, let's say Christianity. And then you come back and then you see the same kind of, two different religions, how they interact with each other. How would you explain the relationship that you see currently in India as a broader relationship between Hindus and Christians, and also specifically in Goa?
Okay, so firstly, while Hinduism, in the context of what's happening globally, would like to position itself as a religion, I think Sanatan Dharma goes way beyond religion. It really is a walk or a journey of spirituality rather than religion. When you come into the domain of religion, as described by the learned men and women of the world, it comes into what is considered to be an institutional format or a dogmatic format.
Right, right.
How
I
and
think I should clarify that when I talk of religion, it is only in terms of making it, acceptable to the larger audience. I don't mean religion, and I don't consider dharma as religion. I don't. I would usually not use the term, but we are, kind of helpless here, and somehow we have to bring the ideas across. That's why I loosely use religion.
I completely understand the context of the usage of the word religion. However, being the person that I am, I would like to, in this conversation, even with people who are listening to it, dwell deeper on the beauty of what Sanatan Dharma is. Sanatan Dharma has nothing to do with religion per se in the understanding of the word religion or its usage or its institutions as far as global understanding is. You see, it's like a frogs in a well. They're all fighting over the same thing. I think the beauty of Sanatan Dharma is that he's not the frog sitting in the well. He's sitting on top of the well and watching the frogs that are inside the well completely confused about where they're going. When the water dries up, the frogs will have nothing to do over there. This frog has already moved out of the well and gone to greener pastures. That is the beauty of Sanatan Dharma. So I would never want to place, and I'm sorry if I seem a little assertive on this, but that is what I believe, that we, our system of belief, our system of spirituality, our system of dharma is way, way above the rationality and the understanding of the Abrahamic religions, as well as what the Western world considers to be the context of religious discourse. So today, Bharat is rising from the submissiveness that it has experienced over the last 1,000 years. And it
Right.
is just for the people of Bharat to stand up against any atrocities, conflicts that are rising out in order to make us submissive back again. Why should Bharat, when dealing with the rest of the world, be second to none? Right? So today, when why one of the reasons I came out in support of my sisters and brothers who are Hindus is because I saw the narrative, is because I saw the targeting of Hindus was coming out of a vested interest to make Bharat and the Bharatiyas once again submissive to a foreign power, whether it was done through religion or whether it was done through politics or trade. The idea was to make us submissive, and it continues to remain to make us submissive.
Absolutely, absolutely,
That
absolutely.
is where I see the problem, and that is the reason why I came out. If you go by my belief systems, I'm somebody who prefers to be extremely quiet and go about doing my work. But when I realized that there is a narrative that is working against the interest of Bharat, and it is a time when India is rising as Bharat, the only way you can do that is by demonizing my Hindu sisters and brothers. And that is something I could not allow. So, even coming from a Christian faith, that became my core fight and will remain my core fight to protect Sanatan Dharma, because Sanatan Dharma is above any religion.
Now, you have written glowingly about India's recent rise on the world stage, not just economically, but also in terms of its civilizational narrative. To quote from one of your blogs, Sanatana Dharma is the soul of India, and it is the principles of Sanatana Dharma that will make India the peacemaker in global conflicts. Can you please share your perspectives on the importance of the Hindu ethos for Bharat's revitalization and its progress? As a Christian, what makes you rejoice about Bharat's Sanatana Dharma taking center stage? And are your views broadly aligned with the Indian Christian community?
I think India is rising as Bharat. India is rising as Bharat because we have a very assertive Prime Minister Narendra Modi, who is not shy of exhibiting his Hindu Dharma. That is the first transformation that is happening as far as our nation is concerned. In order for India to rise as Bharat, every single Indian, whether he's a Hindu, whether he's a Christian, whether he's a Sikh, or whether he's a Muslim, must not shy away from exhibiting what is essentially the core ethos of Bharat, which is Sanatan Dharma. So, as a Christian, when I am invited to a temple and I am uh, participating in the arti and the various programs that happen inside the temple, I don't hesitate when a tilak is put on my forehead. I do it because I believe in the belief that my Hindu sisters and brothers have when they're putting that tilak on my forehead. When I'm offered prasad by the priest, I accept it, and I'm grateful for that, because I am again respecting and accepting the faith of my Hindu sisters and brothers. That core, uh, acceptance of beliefs, that core acceptance of people, of humanity, is the essence of Sanatan Dharma.
Okay.
In fact, if you go deeper into our Vedas, into understanding our own spiritual renaissance, as you would call it, that happened, and the spiritual renaissance is happening even now, is that there was an understanding of life in totality. And that understanding of human life was translated to a community, then translated to a nation, and therefore systems of living together were formulated. Okay? When the West came in and they fought and they divided us on various counts, the very beauty of our systems, were trampled upon and convoluted, and therefore we as Indians and Bharatiyas, we are completely lost on what is the actual path forward. But the path was always very clear if you read the Vedas. You are respected in society based on your skills. You are respected in society not because you belong to a particular caste. You are respected in society because your skills allow for you to become, maybe say, a warrior for the country, a doctor for the country, a trader for the country. It's all dependent on your skills. And that was the core essence of Sanatan Dharma. Sanatan Dharma was a societal living. Let's take, for example, Goa. Okay. There's a concept in Goa that existed prior to the liberation of Goa, and it still to a certain extent exists in Goa. And it was actually adopted by the Portuguese, but it's really a Vedic system that existed. They were good at adopting what was good and then bringing a lot of what was bad of theirs as well. So the village, it was known as the village republic system, which is called in Goa as the Communidad system. The village republic system allowed for a particular village to become an economic entity. And every resident in that particular village was the responsibility of that village, whether it was marriage, whether it was children education, whether it was sustenance or economic sustenance. So when somebody got married, they were given a small 300 square meters part, as you would call it. And that person was allowed to then, grow his vegetables and rice and, look after his family. So it was very cohesive. Societal community living according to the principles of Vedas and the principles of Sanatana Dharma were very cohesive living. It was always based on the principle of conflict avoidance and not conflict resolution, right? Now, I see this transformation happening in India. India is seeing a spiritual renaissance happening, whether you are a Hindu, whether you are a Christian, whether you are a Sikh, and whether you are an Indian Muslim. You are understanding that there is more to you and your roots with Bharat than the context of religion. So nation is above all, and the fact that you belong to that nation, that drives your inherent roots, makes you spiritual and respectful to the faith of the other person, even though you don't come from that faith. So for me, that's how I see it. I see learnings in every aspect of what is transforming in India at this point of time. And I want to be in that position to help people understand this renaissance of India rising as Bharat, to understand the context of the spiritual learnings and the sciences that our ancestors brought down to us. So I remember talking to a friend of mine, and he was asking me, somebody who belongs to one of the Hindu organizations, and he was telling me, Savio, what could we do to revive spiritual learnings in our Hindu society? And I humbly told him, I said, listen, if you want to keep Sanatan Dharma alive, the way you will keep it is exactly the way it was done in the past. Temples were the source of knowledge, understanding, and discernment in the past. When you bring back that learning inside temples in almost every village in India, that is the time when your young, the future, will start learning and understanding what the beauty of Sanatan Dharma is all about.
I mean, that's obviously your vision, and it's obviously very admirable vision. Question is, does the broader Christian community buy into it?
The broader Christian community, in all fairness, a lot of Christians are nation builders. They are certainly in sync with the idea of India, Mother India. What they are conflicted about is the religious aspect of say Hinduism, for that matter, for lack of words, and where India is moving as far as religions, their understanding of religion taking a predominance towards decisions, which is a confused understanding of the entire situation. For example, uh, they see a problem in some of them. They see a problem in the fact that you have what is termed to be a Hindu majority government. But in all fairness, if you go by the data, this has not been a Hindu majority government. This has been a very balanced government to all sections of society, to Muslims, to Christians, to Sikhs. So they are, in my humble opinion, victims of propaganda that allows for them to think in that direction. Let's come to Goa, because Goa is a perfect example, right? So in Goa, because we were traditionally Hindus, right, and then of course there was the conversion that happened during the Portuguese rule. Some Christians do follow Hindu practices and traditions because they've been doing it for years, and that's a part of their cultural ethos. The conflict is majorly on what you see in the news and majorly when it is propaganda. But at a base level, at a grassroots level, Hindus, Christians, Muslims have been living in peace for a long time. So that cohesiveness has always existed.
Very well said. I'll take a quick, turn into a different directions. So my question here is that you wrote an open letter to Pakistani Prime Minister, asking him to basically not talk about Christians in India and other religious minorities and all that. What prompted you to write to the Prime Minister?
Very simple. The Pakistani Prime Minister was primarily talking about minorities being in danger in India. Now, I find that highly ridiculous, because if you were to go by that logic, look at the growth of the Muslim population in India. India was divided based on religion. The Muslims who opted for a nation based on Islam was given a territory called Pakistan. They were even given money by the Indian government at that point of time, right? They chose a religion of Islam and they went. There were some Hindus, there were some Christians that also stayed in what became Pakistan. And then do a comparative analysis between whether Hindus, Christians have risen as a population in Pakistan vis-a-vis their growth in India. And you will realize that the mockery of the statement of the then Prime Minister, Imran Khan, right, was completely laughable. Hindus are down to roughly about 2% or less than that in Pakistan. Muslims are about 20 crore in India. Christians are at even worse in Pakistan. But the Christians are growing in India. So what does it mean? It means India continues to live by the principles of Sanatana Dharma, which is cohesiveness, which is tolerance. You think right. Pakistan is a tolerant nation? It's not. Right. Most Islamic nations, especially Islamic nations that have been convert Islamic nations, whose roots have never really been Arab, but have been converted, are the worst of the lot as far as dealing with cohesiveness. Whether it is Afghanistan, whether it is Pakistan. I can give you the names of all the probable Islamic nations who have been converted Islam. Now, the reason they behave like that is very simple. For years, they've been told that they have been away from the true path. So they are made to feel guilty. Then they are made to feel repentive of what is done. And most importantly, is the third aspect of it, which is to prove yourself worthy of being a part of that religion. And that is when it gets to be aggressive.
In one of your articles, you have supported Bharat's right to protect its Sanatan ethos by legislating against forced or coercive conversions. In fact, you have pointed out that the Catholic Church as well as the Protestant Church have also waged just wars to protect their faith from being threatened. Now, does this not go against Church's policy of saving the heathen souls? How does the broad Christian community in India and the Church react to your views?
You have to look at the the church as an institution, and that institution runs on certain laws, guidelines that the institution has formed itself. They may or may not be completely aligned with the teachings of Jesus at that point of time. So institutionalization of religion, in my understanding, while some aspects of the faith remains good, the commercialization of religion is what drives conversion across the world. The front end is what is spiritual, but there is also undoubtedly a commercialization of religion happening, and this has been happening for a long time. The only way in which, and the logic why it has happened, is if you look at Islam and if you look at Christianity, and they are spread across the world, it has been Islam has definitely been through force, and there's no doubt about it, because there's been no reformation that has happened that led somebody to become an Islamic religion, to join an Islamic religion. Christianity was really about many different thought processes, and then it collected itself after many years to form what was the Nicene Council, and therefore you had the formation of the Roman Catholic Church. Of course, the real essence of what Jesus' teachings is or was lies in the Gnostic Christians. The Gnostic Christians were then branded as heretics by the Catholic Church because they wanted to have dominance over the entire Christian theology and the Christian thought. Then it faces its own divisions, where you had the Protestants that came out, and then further divisions happened on, again, interpretation of what they understood of the teachings of Jesus and the faith that was propagated around. So religion will always be conflicting with itself. Otherwise, in Ireland, you wouldn't have had this long gone war between the Protestants and the Catholics. So in India, for now, so there is a rapid spread of believers from the Christian community happening in India, right?
Mm-hmm.
They are the ones who are aggressively promoting what is called church planting, where they're planning to plant about 3 lakh to 4 lakh churches in India over the next 5 to 10 years, right? The believers, the evangelicals, we need to understand and distinguish the denominations and their pattern and their mode of operations. There is a sort of conflict happening within the Catholic Church itself. The believers, the evangelicals, want to draw people from the Catholic Church. They want to draw people away from the Hindu faith. They want to bring them from the Islamic faith, because that is the zealousness of their belief, right?
Right.
That is where the real strategy to protecting our dharma lies. So the point is, how do you deal with conversions? You have to deal with conversions with very strict laws. That is the legal aspect of it. Then comes with understanding the societal reasons that allow for them to be allured and coerced in the first place. So how does one protect one's dharma or one's faith? Is by inspiring the very people of that faith to believe and to continue to believe in that faith, right? For example, if today I were to go to somebody who is in the marginalized section of society and I were to give him food, I were to give him clothing, I was to give him education, I was to give him healthcare, in our cultural beliefs, that I would be God to that person. No? Even today, there are many people within the country who consider Prime Minister Narendra Modi to be godlike for the kind of work and the benefits he's made to the economically weaker sections of society. That is our inherent nature. That is our ethos. That the person who's there, the Annadata, as we call it, is revered as God. That is what we need to understand. See, we are what I think, and I've shared this with many friends in the Hindu organization, is that Sanatan Dharma does not require aggression to stand and to create the transformation. What it does require is inspiration, an ability to rekindle that same fire that is already within them.
As you know, there are a number of long standing irritants between Bharat and the Catholic Church. The Goan Inquisition, Saint Xavier's butchery of Hindus and Hindu institutions, and his sainthood status, the ongoing conversion machinery operating in various parts of Bharat, and so on and so forth. These are all issues that cannot be easily swept under the carpet. And in fact, you've also yourself written about many of these issues. I wonder if things can be set right between Bharat and the church. And what do you think the two parties have to do in order to get there?
So let's agree that Goa witnessed a very brutal inquisition. Okay, and that's the reality. Okay. The Inquisitions were an act of the Catholic Church to predominantly deal with what was considered to be Gnostic Christians, people who did not believe in the Catholic faith. There were a large section of the earlier believers of Christianity that did not accept the hegemony of the Roman Catholic institution. And that is the genesis of the Inquisition. So the Inquisitions were conducted in countries that had presence of the Gnostic Christians. Goa, if you go back into history, was a very dominant region of Gnostic Christians. Gnostic Christians were people who assimilated with cultural aspects of that place. They were more connected to the indigenous beliefs. The Gnostic Christians, they call Gnostic Christians, they were really the actual followers of Jesus' teachings, but because of the terminology, I'm using that word, right? So they came in, the belief systems were different. They believed in duality. There was not one single entity of belief or one institution of faith. They understood the connection of the nature, the animals, the male, female, a lot of it, which was not acceptable to the Roman Catholic establishments, right? And that's when the Inquisition came. So when the Inquisition was brought into Goa, you need to understand a little bit of the history prior to that. There were Franciscans, there were Dominicans, there were Augustinians of the Catholic Church in Goa before the arrival of the Jesuits. Inquisitions were propagated by the Jesuits, not the Franciscans, not the Augustinians, not the Carmelites or the Dominicans, because these were mostly monk-based faith of Christianity. The Franciscans were more service-oriented. The Augustinians, the Carmelites, and the Dominicans were more monk, so they would be more cloistered in their approach and come out for little service and things like that. The Jesuits, on the other hand, were people who at that point of time were missionaries. Okay, they were also people who thought and believed that education and healthcare were the ways in which you can take your religion to another foreign land. The Jesuits is where Francis Xavier represented. When the Jesuits came in, they got aggressive in their conversions, and they were ably supported by the Portuguese army at that point of time. Around the same time, Francis Xavier also came into Goa, and he was a very zealous preacher and a very, very assertive, because, like most zealots, it is completely about faith in your beliefs and faith in the institutions that you represent. When he went to Malacca, he had written two letters that were sent to the King of Portugal, where he highlighted three important aspects in that letter: the need for an inquisition, two, the focus on the believers that existed, which were again the Gnostic Christians, and the Brahmins, right? Because he saw the Brahmins as the hindrance or the conflict point of his understanding of the society at that point of time. It was 8 years after his death that king who he sent the letter to did not accept it. It was 8 years after his death that the son undertook the Inquisition. So, in all justification as far as the Inquisition is concerned, the zealousness of Francis Xavier did moot an idea of an Inquisition to deal with the Gnostic Christians that were there in India, because that was the basis of an Inquisition, and to deal with the Brahmins, which he saw as an hindrance. Okay. It was 8 years after that that the Inquisition came. So I personally don't see a direct relationship of Francis Xavier with the acts that happened 8 years later. But the suggestion of it was an aspect of that letter. And that is where the entire issue emerged. So the fact of the matter is, at this point of time, how do you deal with the conflict that has happened and the atrocities that have happened? So I have personally made a statement, not once, but several times, that the Pope of the Catholic Church must apologize to the indigenous people of Goa for the Inquisition that was meted out on them. Why should he do it? Because the popes before him, and including himself, have set a precedent for apologizing for the acts of Inquisition that were committed in other parts of the world. The Goa Inquisition was brutal. It was real. What we need to understand is, how do you reconcile what is the past with the present, so that we set the foundation for a better future. The reconciliation of the past is the acceptance of the past without bias or prejudice.
Well, I just since we were talking about Pope, do you have any other expectations from him? I'm here that there is a rumor that he may be coming to India on a trip. How do you expect things to go?
Well, my intent, of course, is for him to apologize, just as he has done in other countries. But that's my intent. For it to become a movement is when every like-minded Indian, whether Hindu or Christian, from Goa and from other parts of India, understand the importance of what transpired during the Goa Inquisition. It is not to point finger at the Catholic Church, because the Catholic faith has got nothing to do with the institution's acts. What has it got to do is with the fact that this atrocity was committed on the indigenous people of Goa. And if you have set a precedent to apologize to other countries, why not to the people of Goa and India?
Right.
So the importance of the Pope's visit is signified by the importance of Prime Minister's relationship with the Vatican, which has been, and the Catholic Church, which has been, and other Christian denominations, which have been improving over the last couple of years. The reason he met the Pope when he was in Vatican was a cementing of that relationship. The Pope was supposed to come to India last year, but because of his health, he was not able to make that journey. And I think certain sections of the Catholic and the Christian population from India advise certain secretaries in the Vatican that coming before the election of 2024 might just give an undue advantage to Prime Minister Modi within the Christian community. So he's decided to postpone the visit to after the election, which is fine because I don't think Prime Minister Modi was looking at the Pope's visit to cash
Right.
in on electoral prospects.
Right.
Prime Minister believes that the Christian community in India is as integral to the growth of India as any other community. So it is only
Absolutely.
incumbent and prudent on him to have relationship with Christian leaders that of a global level that represent the faith in India.
I am a linguist. I did my master's research field thesis on Konkani language. I was very much fascinated how the language brings together the community in Goa, the both Christians and Hindus. One of the things I noticed that they love Konkani, no doubt, but the Christians love their newspaper in Roman script written, but the Hindus did mostly in Devanagari. That
No,
was one of
so
my. I'm talking about 30 years ago. All I'm trying to say is that I still see a lot of, despite all the differences, there is a lot of binding together, coming together. Do you see that in your life too?
the normal belief in around the world is that Goa is a Christian dominated society. That's not true. 65% of the people in Goa are Hindus, very strong Hindus of their faith. About 25 to 26% are Christians. The reason why you see Goa on as a Christian dominated state is because that's the kind of image that Goa has carried globally with the advent of tourists and people coming in. It was a Portuguese colony, so therefore it will be predominantly Christian. The answer that isn't true. What is true is that there's a very strong cultural and spiritual ethos of Sanatana Dharma in Goa. It's resonated in our temples. It's resonated in the practices of the people, irrespective of their religions, in the villages, in the food that they eat. It's in the cohesiveness
Definitely.
of living together.
Yeah.
Savioji, in one of your articles, you wrote, and I quote, "The politics of reservations in education will damage India's future by creating a huge workforce across India that is averagely educated." Now, this is obviously a very admirable position. Can you share your thoughts as to how the reservation system hurts Bharat's progress? And do you think we can ever get rid of this monster?
So, because I'm a believer of equal opportunities for everyone, when I mean everyone, I'm referring to citizens in a country.
Sure.
The mere fact, and because I believe that the future is about merit rather than reservation,
Sure.
I have often and will continue to take a very firm stand as far as reservations are concerned. My stand is very simple that today there are children, there are people who are excelling in their studies, excelling in their skills, excelling in their work domains. They need to play an important role as far as nation building is concerned. Their caste or their creed cannot become the reasons for their decisiveness in opportunities in the nation building process, right? For example, just because somebody scores 65% but belongs to a particular caste, which is, say, a backward caste as described by the people in the country, they should get equal favoritism to somebody from a general category who scores 94%. The reasons why reservations were put 75 years ago was to create an equality of bringing people who were below power to an economic position. The problem is that economic position became a caste position. Really, what you should be doing is working on the economically weaker sections of society, not through the basis of caste or creed-based reservations, but on the basis of the economic strata, which means what? You want to elevate a certain section of society that is an economically weaker section, then you do it by giving scholarships, by giving incentivizations, by increasing trainers and coaches within that segment so that they come to a particular standard. By creating reservations for whatever reasons known, politically or otherwise, you are stemming the very root of growth in the country, because what you really are putting forth is mediocrity. And it might not seem problematic now. It will seem problematic in the years ahead. One of the reasons why we were invaded before also was because none, if you look into what the British did, right, or even the Mughals, how many people represented the British army in India when compared to Indians?
Very small. Yes.
The Indians were turned against killing their own people.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Right? Why did they do that? Because they allowed for that mediocrity to persist. Are you saying that we cannot anticipate a future threat to our country based by the same forces who attacked us before? They are doing it on a daily basis. So when you put soldiers of merit and knowledge in positions of power based on merit, then you are creating a strong foundation of service towards the nation. But when you're doing it based on caste or creed or any other description of reservation, then you are creating it's like building a house on sand. It seems strong for a very long period of time, but the sand will sink.
So I think, Savio, on that note, I would like to thank you from the bottom of my heart for giving us your valuable time and sharing your thoughts with us and with our viewers. And I'm sure my co-host feels the same way as well.
Absolutely.
I've learned a lot in the process. And once again, thank you. And I hope I can call upon you in future as opportunities arise to have.
It will be my pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
God bless.
Namaskar.
Thank you.
Namaste.
Namaste.
Bharat Mata Ki Jai.
Bharat Mata ki Jai.